Rabbi Berkowitz, Bavakasha, the floor is yours.
Boker Tov, Tzoraim Tovim, Erev Tov. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where it is that you find yourself in the world. My name is Rabbi Matt Berkowitz, and I am honored to serve as president of Schechter Institutes. And it's a delight to be speaking with you from our amazing arts and culture campus in the Tel Aviv neighborhood of Neve Tzedek here at Neve Schechter. And it is wonderful to be with you all. I want to say Bruchim Abayim, welcome. It is great to have you in this virtual Beit Midrash space. I also want to begin with a moment of remembrance and a moment of a word of Torah. That moment of remembrance, I want to begin by saying that all of our hearts are heavy given the terrorist attack in Sydney, Australia. We are thinking of the 11 victims of that attack, and we want to express our solidarity with the Australian Jewish community. They should know that they are in our prayers, and we wish them not only tanchumim, not only condolences, but we wish them much strength in the days and weeks ahead. I also want to start with a word of Torah that comes from this week's Parsha, Parshat Miketz, as we find ourselves in the midst of the Joseph story. And I'd like to, in particular, share the wisdom of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. In Parshat Miketz, we have the fruition of the dreams of Pharaoh. That is the 7 years of plenty, followed by the 7 years of famine. And Jacob turns to his sons and encourages them to go down to Egypt to procure rations. When he does this, he says to them, Kichu mizimrat haaretz beklichem. Take with yourselves some of the choice produce and put it in your vessels and present it as a gift to the ruler in Egypt. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, instead of translating Zimrat Haaretz as choice produce, literally translates it connected to the word zemer, a song, and says that what what Jacob was encouraging his sons to do was to take a song with them to the land of Egypt. And when they missed their homeland, they should hum that song, they should hum that tune, and it will immediately connect them back to the land of Israel. How beautiful that is, how beautiful a notion that is. And it speaks to the power of song and music, and that is so much of what our Neve Schechter, our Arts and Culture Campus, is about. It's a delight to welcome you to this session in which we're focused on Hanukkah, on bringing light into the world. We have three amazing speakers that are going to be presenting to us today. Rabbi Irena Gretsevskaya, who is the executive director of Midreshet Schechter, Hadass Dayan Rosenberg, who is head of the Jewish Art Track at the Schechter Institute of Jewish Studies, and then Dr. Avram Yoskovich, who's head of the Land of Israel and Jewish Thought MA tracks at Schechter Institutes. We begin with Rabbi Irena Gritsevskaya, who is going to be giving an introduction to the Maccabees of our time, a live candlelighting from Ukraine. Rabbi Irena, it's my delight and honor to turn it over to you.
Hello, everyone, and happy Hanukkah. It's great for us to be here, and I'm so happy to see all my friends in Ukraine. I am now in Tel Aviv, in our center in Neve Schechter, but just in a few days, I will be on my way to Ukraine to meet all those wonderful people you can see here via Zoom, our Chernovitz community, and many others who will be joining us for the preparation camp for our camp that will be during the summer. So I'm very excited to have candle lighting in Ukraine. But meanwhile, 4 years, almost 4 years have passed since the day when Russia invaded fully the full invasion of Ukraine. And we are here in our, actually, it's our third Hanukkah during this wartime, and it's not getting any easier. So today we will join, hopefully, two of our communities. One is our wonderful community in Chernovitz, and I wanted to show you the map so that you will understand geographically where I'm moving from. That's the place where I'm going this time. In Chernovtsi. It's on the Romanian border, so relatively it's safe, but it doesn't mean that life there is any easier. And then we will join the capital of Ukraine, Kiev, which is here, our amazing community. And actually, if everything will go well, we will be in the center of Kiev in Podil. That's where we put our menorah outside. So when I talked to Lev Kleiman, the wonderful leader of the Chernovtsi community, and our rabbinical student too, hopefully there will be new rabbis in Ukraine soon, and he definitely will be one of them. He said to me, we really hope everything will work out, because the light we're supposed to get on 6:30 according to the schedule. So we hoped it will work according to the schedule, and now we see they are there, so that's wonderful. But actually, Ukraine now suffers from major electricity shortages. There are shortages all around the country in every areas, some of them scheduled and some of them are unscheduled because of the power stations that were bombed and the lack of electricity in the country. So Hanukkah really becomes a holiday where the light is important and where we are trying to fight the darkness, the physical darkness that people in Ukraine are experiencing right now, when we can't even imagine that, when there's no lights in the houses, but there's also no lights outside. All the streets are dark and people have difficulties to get to the synagogue just because it's winter time, and sun is not helpful during this time. And it's hard just even to get to the synagogue. So actually, when I teach my conversion class, I get all kind of questions. And one of the questions I get, whether we can use the Hanukkah candles. It's kind of a question that you would expect in a different times, but nowadays, sometimes it's really the only light that in the houses, after many hours of shortages that people sometimes are experiencing right now. So in Ukraine, we have 4 communities, except for those 2 communities that you will join right now. We have community in Odessa. And we have community in Kharkiv, which is really, really close to the Russian border, as you can see here, and really a very difficult place to live in right now. So what we are trying to do in Ukraine is really help people to get through those times. And I hope that many of our friends have received or will receive our presents for Hanukkah, which are warm clothes that are supposed to help to get through this third very difficult and very cold winter, when even basic things are not obvious. But actually, I think what you are learning through this period of war, that you don't take things for granted. You then don't take the lights for granted. You then don't take the warmth for granted. And what you really appreciate is the friendship, the unity of Jewish people that are always there in difficult situations for their family, like feeling of the extended family that we have. And with that, I want to take you to Kyiv if they are ready. Max, are you here?
Chernovitz.
So let's go to Chernovitz first, because I think they are having problems with connecting. Lev, we are joining our Chernovtsi community, and here we can see Lev Kleiman, who is the leader of this community, and it's really great to see you guys. You have to
Yeah,
unmute.
come here,
Oh,
listen.
okay.
Hi, good evening, everyone from Chernivtsi. So this
Before
is
Lena
our
is talking, and she
community.
should, you should switch. I think we can't see you. You have to switch a different. You have to go 180 degrees.
Do you see and hear me?
Yes, now it's great. Now it's great, Lena.
Okay.
But before Lena talks, I want to introduce her because Lena is actually the wonderful, except for she's a Hebrew teacher, but also she's our senior in the camp. And without her, we wouldn't be able to do those wonderful things that we are doing with the kids. But also, she's the amazing
Thank you.
translator to Ukrainian of the first Ukrainian Siddur that we've done. Okay, now to you, Lena. She just
So
knows
I'm
a lot
happy
of languages.
Yes, happy to greet you here in Chernivtsi. As you can see, many of our community members are here today. And it's actually a miracle. Many of the things I wanted to say, actually, Irina mentioned. I wanted to say that the Masorti community in Chernivtsi existed from the 1990, and our community, Aviv, will celebrate 15 years anniversary next year. And I'm a member of this community, an active member, and this community is part of my life. And we have here small children and very passionate youth and families and elderly people. And everyone brings his own experience to this community. And in the recent years, our community grown in a very special way. As Irena mentioned, because of the war, people were forced to leave their homes in many cities in Ukraine, and some of them came here. So our community welcomed them here. Many of them are in the room today with us, and they are not newcomers anymore. There are members, active members in all the programs that we have here in the community, and we just now before the Zoom had a theater show with different members about the Hanukkah story. We have here our own special theater group and enjoy a show from them. And luckily, we do have electricity today. Last 2 weeks were extremely difficult because there was light.
Irena, we've lost her.
That's the problems. But can you take out the map maybe? And then, oh, yes, now it's better. Let's see. That's what happens sometimes. The electricity shortages, they are not scheduled. It can happen at any moment. And then with that, the internet goes out. That's one of the problems that's happening. You get a small that's how I do many of my conversion classes nowadays, when just in the middle either people just are sitting in dark and I just see windows with people who are sitting in dark, whether the connection is very bad, and it's really one of the problems of the life nowadays. And we are now in the safest less bombed place of all our places that we have there, where at least we can have sirens, but the possibility of the actual bombs falling on them is very, 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 very low. So in addition to those things, we have other problems. Meanwhile, till Lena will work on her connection, we can see Kiev here. Guys, I'm sending my love to Kiev community. Can you hear us? Can you make Gromada Masoret just in the to pin them so that we will see them? They're in the central square. It's the historical place, and those who've been in Kiev know how important it is. We can't get many people there. We're allowed to be there only for 10 minutes. There's a security governmental around that. And I've talked today to Matt that after hearing the news about Sydney, I actually considered whether it's a right thing that we are doing there, having our mezuzah. I'm so happy to see those people who are actually my family, and I'm very excited to see them there. We are going now to our leader of our community, Maxim Melnikov, of our Kiev community, an amazing leader who actually managed in these difficult times to have all these people around, and I'm very touched to see them. I'm happy that they've managed to connect from the center of Kiev in Podil to us with the amazing menorah. It's our menorah that we are putting every year in Podil in the central square of the old Kiev. Maxim, we are with you.
Як вже правильно сказала Ірина, сьогодні ми стоїмо
Цікаво, їх чутніше.
просто неба у серці єврейського поділу.
They stand here under the open sky. It's part of Kyiv Podil.
Поділ – це місце, де київські євреї запалювали ханукальні свічки понад сторіччя тому.
Podil is a place where Kyiv Jews lit Hanukkah candles over a century ago.
Світло Хануки проходить крізь покоління, переживало війни і переслідування, зберігало громаду навіть у найтемніші часи.
The light of Hanukkah passed through generations, survived wars and persecution, and preserved the community even in the darkest times.
І те, що сьогодні ми запалюємо першу свічку саме тут, свідчить традиція жива, громада вистояла, а світло продовжує свій шлях.
And the fact that we are lighting the first candle together here, they prove that the tradition is alive, the community has survived, and the light continues its path.
Навіть у темряві війни ми продовжуємо зберігати в серцях світло, надію на диво і віру в перемогу.
Even in the darkness of war, we keep the light in our hearts, hope for a miracle and faith in victory.
Сьогодні ми запалюємо першу свічку. Перша свічка – це маленький промінчик, із якого народжується надія. Це початок шляху до перемоги надії над зневірою, світла над темрявою.
They realize the first candle. This first candle is a small ray of light from which hope is born. It is the beginning of the path to victory, the victory of hope over despair, of light over darkness.
У перший день Хануки ми ніби заново промовляємо світок. З нами світло, віра і пам'ять поколінь, які доводять, світло перемагає.
On the first day of Hanukkah, we seem to be saying to the world once again, have light, faith, and the memory of generations that prove that light prevails.
Можливо, не так швидко, як би ми хотіли, але єврейський народ дуже добре знає, що перемога обов'язково приходить до тих, хто зберігає свою віру і свою традицію.
Perhaps not as quickly as we would like, but the Jewish people know well that victory will surely come to those who preserve their faith and their tradition.
І ми обов'язково ми віримо, що ця історія перемоги світла над темрявою, вона додасть сили нам і Україні.
We believe that this story, the story of light over darkness, will give strength to us and to Ukraine.
Що вона допоможе вистояти в темні часи і запалити у душах світло надії.
That it will help us endure dark times and kindle the light of hope in our soul.
Бо Ханука – це в першу чергу не просто спогад про давнє диво.
Because Hanukkah is not just a memory of an ancient miracle.
Це нагадування нам і про те, що навіть невеличка кількість людей, які тримають за собою віру і свої традиції, здатна перемогти набагато сильнішого ворога.
It is a reminder that even a small number of people holding to their faith and traditions can defeat a much stronger enemy.
Дорогі друзі, нехай це свято і сяйво цієї першої свічки, яку ми зараз запалимо, торкнеться кожної душі, зігріє наших близьких, підтримає тих, хто поруч і в Україні, і в Ізраїлі, і подарує всім нам сили, єдність і впевненість.
May the light of the first candle touch every soul, inform our loved ones, support those around us in Ukraine and Israel, and give us all strength, unity, and confidence.
Я також хочу надати слово члену нашої громади Іялю Далі, сьогодні разом з нами.
Очень коротко, очень коротко.
Как самых всегда приятно приехать с Берлина обратно в нашу общину, увидеть, что жизнь здесь продолжается и помощь нужна, как никогда нашим общинам в Украине. Но мы верим, что свет победит тьму и поддерживает наши общины, и мы вместе с ними.
Так, і, друзі, зараз я пропоную запалити першу свічку. Після
Okay,
того,
let
як
me translate before that. Eyal came from Berlin. He is a member of our community who lives right now in Berlin. Yes, Anya, I can see that. I can see all your love. And we are happy to have him here. And he wishes our communities all the best and says to us, Chag Sameach, too. So it's really, really great to see you, Eyal, joining our community in Padil for Hanukkah. It's amazing. We do it symbolically, and then we will light the biggest.
Барух ата Адонай, Елохейну мелech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu להדליק נר חנוכה.
Amen.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, שעשה נסיעותינו, ועמנו הגיעים בזמן הזה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, שהגיענו וקיבלנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
Amen.
Співаємо
Да,
всі
співаємо.
Хануки.
Thank you very much, guys. We are sorry to leave you. We'll just Josh, help me to mute them. We send you all our love. We know that you can't stay there for long and you have to leave the place, so we don't want to keep you there, but we are sending our love from here to you. And see you soon. See you soon. Скоро вас встречу. Очень-очень рада вас видеть. И спасибо огромное. Очень много тепла и света от меня вам. Со светлом. So let's try to get back to Chernovtsi. If possible, I can see. I don't know whether they. No, there's a still problem with the connection. So okay, so that's what it is, and that's one of the problems that we have, that neither connection nor light can't be taken for granted nowadays in 2026. Even basic things are not something that you can really count on. And now when I'm going there to have a seminar with our youngsters, really I'm building on the generators, and I'm thinking it will not be the first Hanukkah when I will be lighting Hanukkah candles without the actual light. But being at the third one, it's not easy place to go. So we are back to you, Matt, and happy Hanukkah to everyone in Ukraine. And thank you guys for the effort to join us today.
Toda Rabba, Rabbi Irena Gritsevskaya, and it was so beautiful to get a glimpse of the Chernivtsi Jewish community. And of course, to be part of the Hadlakat Nerot, to be part of the candle lighting in Kyiv. How special that is. Thank you so much for giving us that inspiration. Our program continues, and I am so delighted to introduce to you Hadass Dayan Rosenberg. And I will share with you that Hadass is truly one of the lights of Schechter Institute. She is the head of the Jewish Studies and Art track at Schechter. She herself is a photographer and curator with nearly a decade of experience in the field of photography and visual education. She served as the pedagogical director of GLATZ, the School of Photography, for 3 years, and works as a lecturer at leading schools and institutions such as the Chotam program at Beit Berel College, Photo is Real, and the Male School of Film and Television. She is a researcher in the fields of history and photography at Tel Aviv University. We are so delighted that Hadass is going to be teaching on the use of light and dark in photography. Hadass, all yours.
Hello, good evening, everyone. That's quite a change from before, so I'm sorry for the U-turn that we are taking right now. So thank you, Matt, for the introduction. So what are we going to do today? What are we going to talk about? So as you heard, I'm a photographer. So I came to talk about photography and to talk in general, what is photography? Because we talk about this world so much and we know this world because everyone is a photographer today. So we're going to talk a little bit about that because how light works in the world is part of being a photographer and part of taking photos in our mobile phones. And we're going to talk about why light and shadow matter in photography. We're going to discuss a little bit about the differences between the types of light and of course the connection between Hanukkah and photography. I do want to say I do want to talk about what we're not going to talk about today. We're not going to talk about composition. And why do I say that? Because when I talk about photography, it's very important to understand that photography and light goes hand in hand together. Today, we're going to discuss only about light, but excuse me for not talking about composition. We don't have a lot of time. Just keep that in mind. And we're not going to talk about any professional photography. We are going to talk about mainly about light. So we say a lot photograph, photography. But what are these words? What does it mean? So in Greek, photo means light and graph means draw. So when we take a photo, what we do is we draw with light. So photography is basically how we take the light that exists, and we're going to talk about that soon, the light that exists, and then we're using it in order to draw. Yes, Josh, we can scroll. Thank you. So let's talk for just a minute about how light behaves in the world. Okay, anyone knows? Anybody wants to say? Like, what do we see? What do we know? Anybody knows? I did write it, but so.
Please go ahead.
Okay, so did you know that we cannot see light? Just imagine when you look directly to a light, what happens to your eyes? What happens is that we cannot get any details. We can't get anything. So actually what we see is that the reflection on the surface, that's what we see. We get the light hits the surface and then goes back to us. And that is exactly the colors that we see in the world. So we need to understand that light goes on in the world. Some of it get observed. That's the dark, okay? The dark surfaces that they absorb more light. That's why we don't see a lot, for example, on black clothing. But bright ones reflect more. Just imagine a black t-shirt and a white t-shirt in the sun. The light goes back completely different. So we need to think about that also in photography. When we photograph a black surface or we photograph a brighter one, what happens to the light when it goes back? And then we need to think about something else. When light hits something or passes through glass, for example, or fabric, or even clouds, it becomes softer. You can imagine that, right? You can imagine how light goes through things and then you don't see the actual ray of light. So we need to remember that when we photograph objects, we only photograph the way the light hits them. We don't photograph. We photograph the shape of them thanks to the light. We can scroll. So light doesn't just show us objects. That's very important thing to do because it defines their shape. And what do I mean? I mean that we need also the dark. I mean that we need also shadows. Because otherwise, just try to imagine that everything is bright, everything will look very, very flat. So when we come to photography or everything actually around the world, we wanted the shadows go hand in hand with the light, and that the shadows gives us depth. And right here you can see also in the photo how by using light and the shadows, we get attention of three-dimensional photo. I mean, how come? Because when we talk about photography or art in general or paintings, we get a two-dimensional, right? So how come we get the feeling that we're in a three-dimensional world? That is thanks to light and to the shadows. So let's talk about the beginning a little bit, because not the beginning of light, of course, but we're going to talk about how artists looked at light and understood that perspective of shadow and lighting. So I can imagine some of you know Caravaggio, the Italian painter, who is, we can say, probably maybe the first photographer, we can call them photographer without being able to hold a camera. So Caravaggio worked with light and shadows. And as you can see here, you can get depth into the painting. And that's thanks to the understanding of how light goes through the painting. And we can see the light parts, we can see the dark parts, and then we can scroll a little bit more and to see the work of Vermeer and Rembrandt. Vermeer and Rembrandt are considered to be actually photographers. I know it's weird. And how come? Because Vermeer used to work with light in the way we work with light today. Look at them standing near the window. The understanding of how light goes through. We need to understand that during the 16th century, 15th century, 17th century, until the 19th century, we don't have any electricity. So what we have is basically understanding about lighting from the sun. So for many, many years, painters like Rembrandt and Vermeer, and then goes on, people have tried to capture light. And why? The understanding that light can be drawn with, okay, was early known to these painters. But no one could have actually painted with light. And then we can scroll a little bit more. And we're getting into the 19th century. So what you see here is the first photography ever taken and that we can see today. It was taken by Niespoor Niepce. Niespoor Niepce was a scientist. The beginning of photography, and it's very important for us to understand, wasn't an artistic way. It was only about how to create the image of light and darkness, okay? So Niespoor Niepce took this photo between 8 hours and a few days. What we see here is mainly light and dark and shadows, okay? This is how photography just begun. But we need to understand that once the 19th century, look at the year 1826, once photography became something, people start using it in every single thing. And then we can scroll a little more. And to understand that light in photography has evolved. It started from a physical challenge because we cannot physically understand how a ray of light can become a painting. And then once we got there, we need to understand that this tool began to be a different language, a new language in the world, the language where light was part of the words that we speak. Okay, so photography has always been a story about controlling the light, about chasing it. What hours do we want to go and take a photo? Or about inventing light. At this point where we started, the Niespoor Niepce before, so at that point we do not have light yet, but photography was part of the innovation also with lighting. We can scroll on. I'm not used to not. Yes. So let's think about the types of light that surround us, okay? So we have the sun. It was always about the sun, but we get the moon and we have stars. But more importantly, we have fire. And fire is what we're going to talk about just a few more slides. And LED, and we have bulbs, and we have fluorescent lights, we have neon, and we don't think about the street lights that we have, and we don't think about the screens. And I want to take us for a second to Irena, okay, from before, of all this light that does not really exist right now. Just think about it, about the non-screens and about non-street lights and everything that we take as granted, okay? But when we talk about photography, once we don't have light, we have to invent it. And the invention is called flash, okay, or a strobe, as we call it. So whenever we take a photo, we have to use light, because otherwise we will not be able to take the photo. And then we have the candlelight also. So light in general, okay? You need to remember something that is very important, that every photograph that you see is actually the light reflection of the world. And why is that? Because when I take a photo, I choose what to reveal, right? I take the light and I shape the story by the light. I make you see what I want you to see. Light decides what we notice and what we overlook. And it's very important for us to look at it. Just take a look at this photo, for example. I mean, our mind knows that the building is wider, but the light just gives us this strip of light. It tells a different story. It tells me a different time of the day. It tells me at the different time of the story the photographer wanted to tell us. I mean, because let's face it, the building is dark. If we will look at it and it's just a building, but once we have that very interesting light, something that is changing a little bit, then the light makes the whole photo look so much better. Then we can scroll. And something else we need to remember about light, and especially with Hanukkah, and we're going to talk about it very soon, that light is also an emotion. And what do I mean? I mean, just think about the color of light, how it influences how you feel. For example, if we take a look at the right photo, if I would ask you and you could answer, you would all tell me, oh, it feels so warm. And then if we look at the left one, you would all tell me it feels so cold. But why do we say that? We cannot actually feel the motion, right? Because of the light, because of the color of it. And it calls in photography white balance. Just imagine also in your houses, when you choose the light that you want to, for your living room, for example, you've been asked probably quite a lot. What kind of color do you want? Do you like the warm? Do you like the white light, right? So that's the emotion we get out of the light. And we need to remember that also in photography, we get that. We get to have the emotions with the light. Yes, we can scroll a little more. So if we do that and we look about light and we look on light, let's talk about soft light. Let's talk about how it makes us feel. It makes us feel festive, right? But look at that light. We don't have any depth. We don't have any shadow here. So what we see is what we get. The other things that I didn't talk about was composition, but the depth that we get in this photo comes out of the composition. But look at the light. Look how my voice has changed. Listen how my voice has changed, right? We love those kind of photos. It makes us feel in a certain emotion. And then we can scroll more. And then we get the hard light. We get the direct sun. How we can tell? We have many shadows. We have, you can see how it makes us feel. I can feel the heat comes out of the ground right now. I can feel the summer. I can feel how the temperature. And that's what light also is about, of the feeling that I get physically of how how people over there felt. So let's continue a little bit. So I want you to remember that once you have a light, you have a feeling, you have a moment in time. And what do I mean? Because look at these bicycles. If it was the middle of the day, I don't think this photo would have worked. And why? Because when we look at the sunset, it makes us feel something warm. It goes to our memories of what do we love about the sunset. Otherwise, it's just bicycles on a hill, on top of the hill, right? But the sunset is the feeling, is that moment that most of us really love in the day. Yes, we can scroll more. So I talked so much about light, and I talked so much about how we feel, when we look at light. But what makes Hanukkah visually powerful is not the amount of light. It's the intention behind it. Because I know it might sound like a cliche, but it's not. That one candle is almost anything, and yet it transforms a dark room. It goes on, and I think that after we met everyone in the Ukraine, so it couldn't be, it's like an invitation of what I want to talk about, because it goes on right like in life, but it is exactly the same in photography, because all we need is just a small amount of light to transform and to have a good photo. And then we can scroll a little more and look at in photography, a tiny amount of light, either a window, okay, a flame, a street lamp, something that gives a candle, something that can project the light, it becomes a story. It becomes the whole identity of the photography. We can scroll a little more. So Hanukkah invites us to notice small lights, the fragile lights, okay? I invite you to try and take a picture of your Hanukkiah, because photography teaches us to pay attention to those moments. Try to understand the light near the table. Try to understand the light near the window. And then let's scroll a little bit more. And I want you to think about something that while I did my research about Hanukkah and photography, then something very, very interesting came up, that we placed candles in the windows, and it is for others to see. So in many ways, it's really like photography, because a photograph is also like a window for us. And we also want to put it out and to let other people see what we did. So we place an image into the world, and we want to let other people see it, right? So I want you to think about that we choose what to illuminate and we choose what to reveal. And that is thanks also to the light. So I want you right now to meet from far away few famous Jewish photographers. And I would like you to pay attention to their use of light, because they're doing wonderful, wonderful job. And I'm sure you know some of them, if not all of them. So we have Alfred Stieglitz, for example, beginning of the 20th century, end of the 19th century, using only natural light. And I want you to see how the rays of light can make us feel a certain way. It's the same light, it's the same source, the same sun, but look how different it looks. Scroll a little more. Thank you. So this is actually a gift that I got while researching for photographers that took pictures during Hanukkah. We don't have a lot, by the way, but Roman Wiśniak was a German photographer, Polish also, and he took pictures before World War I. And what we see here is the use of light. He chose to use also candles, but he only took pictures with natural light. Natural, it's not just the sun for it, it's also ambient light. But I want you to see the shadow and the light in his photos, how interesting it is, how great he works with it, with the depth and what we talked about light and shadow. we have one more of him, one more slide. I think it's just wonderful. And that was really a fantastic gift for me because I do know a little bit about photography and photographers, and he was really a gift that I saw. Roman Vishniak was really one of the greatest surprises of this lecture for me. So, and we have a little more. I brought something else. I brought Richard Avedon, and I brought this picture specifically because of the way he uses natural light in a studio. So you can see that here it's a good example of the use of light, for example, in Paris, where we need the sunroof to be all clear so we can get the sunlight. So I brought Richard Avedon for a photo he took for Dior in Paris. That was really cute. I guess some of you know Robert Frank. He's a great American photographer, but specifically I chose this picture because of the use of light and shadow, something that is very interesting. I didn't talk about composition, but I did talk about light, and I think that it's just one photo. Sorry? Oh, thank you. So the shadow and the light inside one picture. I think it's a wonderful work. Usually he took pictures on the street. He's a street photographer, but I think this is one of his greatest work. So we can scroll a little more. I guess you all know his work without knowing that his name. His name is Arnold Newman, and he's one of the greatest portrait photographers, American portrait photographers. He worked with a lot of people. We can see Picasso, but I brought here the examples of photography using light and using the shadows, and makes everything much more interesting to choose what to reveal and what to hide. I think he's using great work. So if you guys want, you can go and see more of his work. Arnold Newman, a great, great American Jewish photographer. We have a few more, Matt, and that's it. So I have another surprise. We have Neil Folberg, and I brought him, and it's almost the last one. And I want you guys to see that he took this photo in Brooklyn, but he actually lives in Jerusalem, and he's a great photographer. He's an American photographer, and he made Aliyah, and he's living in Jerusalem, and he have a gallery, and he's a great photographer, and his name is Neil Noach Folberg, and you're welcome to see more of his work. He's using great light, and just few more, and that will all be it. Look, I found some great photos from Keren Kayemet L'Israel of Hanukkah in the 50s in Israel, of kids with Chanukiot. And actually, we don't get to see that a lot, by the way. So, sorry? Oh, okay. So I brought you a few of the cutest pictures of kids lighting a Chanukiah. And we have a little more. And I think that's it. And if you have any questions, that would be the time.
Hadas, toda rabah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Josh.
Matt, Rabbi?
Makochech Hadas. So appreciated the journey that you took us on, exploring light and dark and photography, and opening this magnificent world to us. How appropriate it is that it's all connected to Chag Urim, to the Festival of Lights. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Avraham Yoskovich, who is the head of the Land of Israel and Jewish Thought MA tracks at Schechter Institutes. His field of study is biblical literature and history. He is a fellow in the Department of Hebrew Literature at Ben-Gurion University of the Negev, engaged in research for ALMA, a project creating a digital atlas of Jewish geography. He's the executive director of Ukimta, an online journal in the field of classical rabbinic literature, and an accredited tour guide. Dr. Avram Yoskovich is a very, very welcome face at the Schechter Institutes, always smiling, always a warm presence, and we're delighted to have him with us. He's going to be talking about the topic of the story of Hanukkah in the 5th century Chukok mosaic. Avram, it's great to have you.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for this wonderful introduction. And I'm so happy to see you all. I actually don't know most of you, and it is the first time for me on this stage. And after we met some of the actual challenges and struggles of Jews around the world, and we saw the modern usage of light in Hanukkah. I want to share with you some enigmatic artifacts, actually, from 1500 years ago. Of course, I get into more details in a few minutes, and I want and Josh maybe will follow the next slide. But first of all, I just want you to see the mosaic itself, almost in full size. I'm just kidding, because this mosaic, first of all, I will try to explain what mosaic is, what is ancient mosaic, in the case that not all of you met this kind of visualization. And we see right now on the screen a mosaic which was found maybe 12 years ago, 12 or 13 years ago, in Chukok, a small, tiny place in the east of Galilee. And it represents some scene, some story, some narrative in a very complicated way. But the phenomena of mosaics or ancient Jewish mosaic in itself is not very unique, because we know it from many different places. Most of them are dated to 14, 15, 16 hundreds years ago, to the Byzantine period in Eretz Israel, in Palestine, under the Christian region. And the synagogues, or the main public buildings, were decorated with mosaic floors representing many kinds of things. And it is a whole discipline, a field of research, of arts, artistic research, and interpretation of the stories, etc., and of course architecture and other fields as well. But the finding of the Chukok mosaic was so unique in several aspects, which is, first of all, that the synagogue was excavated by Professor Jody Magnus. She is coming from Schechter University in North Carolina, and she and their team figured out that there is a building, basically a synagogue, which was a thing that proved later. And this building and this synagogue's floor was decorated in its whole area by many mosaics. So and the mosaics were preserved relatively to more than 1,000 years old. Were preserved relatively in a good shape, as you can see here. So it is not a complete mosaic, but we can see the depiction, the description that the mosaic presents. And many of these mosaics are not yet, Josh. Many of these mosaics are well understood. We see them, and most of the mosaic represents biblical stories. Many of them for the first time. Because we know many other mosaic floors from the period. We know already about Akedat Yitzchak in Bet Alpha, and the temple objects from many places, etc., and so on. But some of the stories in Chukok HANUKKAH synagogue are unique. Are the first time, or maybe the second time, we found such an episodes or references, biblical references in a synagogue, such as Samson, Shimshon, and the foxes, and the Meraglim carrying the grapes on their shoulders. And the first time we found in this synagogue women, a mosaic depicting women from biblical scenes who are Deborah, the judge, and Yael, who killed Sisra, which is very fascinating and surprising finding, etc. and so on. I can speak about the other mosaics for an hour, but the most interesting and most enigmatic finding is this specific mosaic, because this one has no clear reference, has no clues about what is the right interpretation of this story. The other mosaics I mentioned are actually almost undebated because the image is clear. But in this case, scholars, few scholars, among them myself, suggested different interpretation to this mosaic, because the mosaic is very, very blur in a sense. On the one hand, it is very clear. You can see here the three panels. It is very complicated, the mosaic. The other mosaics are only monolithic, one image, and that's all. And here we have three panels. You can see that the upper half of the image contains one image, and the lower half contains the two other panels, different images. And there is a debate. What is the meaning of this mosaic? It was located. I will show it later, the precise location. And I want to give you my interpretation and to try to convince you why it is connected and not connected to Hanukkah at the same time. But first, I want to introduce the most common understanding of this mosaic. And as you can see, keep the mosaic one more sentence. As you can see, to the right hand of the mosaic, you can see an army which dressed like a Greek army, and more than that, the army uses and combat elephants. You can see the two elephants to the right, very decorated elephants, and that what was the aspect that leaded the scholars, among them Jody Magnus, which I mentioned, and others, to understand this mosaic as the first time we found a mosaic in Israel synagogues or Jewish buildings that represents a Second Temple period episode. Why is that? Because people didn't use elephants in the area only in the Hellenistic period, which is the period of between the Persian period and the Roman Persian period. Let's say the final few hundred years before Christian era, the third century, the second century before Christian era. Before that and later, nobody used the elephant or combat elephant as in the army. So for that reason, the name of this mosaic is called the elephant mosaic, and it became like a common knowledge that there is nothing to debate about, and this mosaic probably depicts a scene from the Hellenistic period, which is exactly the period of the Maccabean revolt. The Maccabean, the Hashmonaim, the family, the dynasty of Kohanim that made their rebellion against the Hellenistic Antiochus king and his dynasty, and made Hanukkah, which we celebrate all until today. And that's the reason most of the interpretation suggests that the mosaic is coming from the milieu or the stories or the literary works describing the Maccabean revolt or later the Hashmonaean dynasty in Israel. As for myself, I'm hesitating about this interpretation, and I will show you. I try to convince you that it doesn't necessarily entail that every elephant brings his Maccabean revolt with him. So let's go to the next slide, Josh. Thank you. The question, the issue, so is the question if is the elephant mosaic equals necessarily an Hellenistic sin? Okay, let's go to the first to the next one. So some introduction about the place and before we are delve into the details. So you can see that HANUKKAH is located to the west northern corner of the Sea of Kinneret, Sea of Galilee. Let's follow the next one, the next slide, Josh. Thank you. And here you can see the aerial view of HANUKKAH. This hill is the excavated ancient settlement. You can see to the left upper corner the edge, the corner of the Kinneret. And of course that the hill today, after 10 years of excavations, looks absolutely different, but it is it's beautiful place, and you are more than invited to come when you come to Israel to see the place. It is very available. You can see it from the road, or you can use the road down the hill and go to see the synagogue and other very fascinating findings from that hill, not only the synagogue and its mosaic. For right now, the mosaic itself is covered in order to preserve it. So let's get into the detail. We can see I have an article about it. We won't refer to all details. We just refer to the upper panel of the meeting of the two different groups, having each of them having a leader, very bold figure, which serves as the leader. To the left side, it's the white group, let's call them, and to the right side, we can call them the Greek group or the Greek army. And the question is, who are they and what are they doing here? So I'll give you here the answer, and you can go to your thing. I suggest that this meeting is actually the execution of Ehud ben Gera, who killed Eglon Melech Moab. This story, this narrative is described in book of Judges, chapter 3. I encourage you to open while I speak, to open on your Google, on your Bible, chapter number 3 at Judges. And the story, if I make the long story short, is that Eglon Melech Moab, Eglon, who was the king of the eastern state to Judea, ruled the area and took taxes, and it was very similar maybe to Putin's ministry on Ukraine nowadays. And Ehud ben Gera was the savior, was the Moshiach, was the Shofet, in a heroic action, a heroic execution, went to kill the Eglon, and later after he murdered Eglon, he won, he made the victory on Moab and killed 10,000 soldiers from the Moabic army. So, and then Israel went to a much more bitter period of 20 years. So that was the story. And I suggest that this encounter have some clues about this narrative. But before that, I want to mention another text, much more later text. There is a text, very interesting one, about Hanukkah, who Jews call it Megillat Antiochus or Megillat Hanukkah, like equals or similar to Megillat Esther of Purim. And this text is not biblical, of course, and much later, even from the mosaic itself. There is a debate about its precise dating, but the most convincing opinion is that Megillat Antiochus is a later text coming from the era of Islamic period, which means the not before, not earlier than the 7th, 8th, 9th century CE. Yes, in the end of the first millennium. So it is at least 200 years later, or maybe 300 years later, than the mosaic, than the ancient Jewish community in Eastern Lower Galilee at Hukkok. And this text, if I make it also very short, tells us about the heroic son of Matityahu, Yochanan, who made the same program after Antiochus persecuted the Jews, and Nicanor, his general, was responsible for the persecution. Yochanan, in an heroic soul operation, executed Nicanor, and then he got the victory on the Hellenistic huge army. This text is actually not yet Josh, and bring us back. Thank you. And this story uses some references to biblical narratives, and it is not a surprise if some of you are known with the biblical text. Many later Jewish texts refers to the Bible, to different elements in the Bible, and uses them and make them like kind of inspiration or references to their own literary work. So we can see, I try to show you right now some of the references Megillat Antiochus does. You can see here that the Yochanan, the son of Matityahu, made the sword unto himself, 2 spans in length and 1 span in breadth, which means very, very short sword. It's actually not a sword. And in order to kill Eglon and hid it under his garment. Okay, so this is a clear reference to the story of Ehud in the book of Judges. Let me see the whole slide, just thank you. So Ehud made for himself, not yet. I want to see the reference from the first reference. Thank you. Ehud made himself a 2-edged dagger, a gomed in length, which means also very short sword, which he girded on his right side under his cloak. So the same element, the same literary motif exists in Megillat Antiochus, which is clearly referred to the biblical narrative of Ehud. As we can see here, please show us the whole image of the Hukkok mosaic here, Josh. Take it down a bit. Thank you. That's enough. No. I want to go back to the next one. No. This one. Yes. A bit more. Thank you. No, I want to see his hands. The text about Ehud ben Gera tells us a few times that Ehud was a left hand. He didn't use his right hand. Why it is important? Because this is the most clear clue for the text in this image. As you can see, the companions of the white figure hold swords in their hands, in the right hands, and the main figure in white, the right hand is pointed to the sky, up to the sky, while the left hand holds something. We cannot see what it is because, as I suggest, he holds a very, very small sword. And this is a clear reference to my opinion that this figure is actually Ehud. And we can see the interpretation of the mosaic from the 6th or the 5th century CE, how it transmitted the biblical story about Ehud and visualizes it in a manner of the Byzantine period artistic method. I argue that the same thing was made by the Megillat Antiochus author later, which he used the same element from the biblical narrative and transmitted it to the Antiochus, to the Hanukkah story, which he was edited and demonstrated it in his own way. Let's go to the next one, Josh. Thank you. Stop. Let's see another one. Okay. And Yochanan. Okay, we skipped one. Never mind. It's enough. I used this one. Okay, leave it this way. Thank you. So we can read in the story of Ehud to the right corner here that when Ehud has finished presenting the tribute, he dismissed the people who had conveyed the tribute, which means that Ehud had an excuse. He needed an excuse to get very close to his enemy to stab him, to execute his operation. So his excuse was that he brought a tribute, he brought a korban. And if we look on the mosaic once again, we can see that the foreign king, the Greek king, holds in his hand a calf. What is a calf? It could be a korban, kind of a tribute, which is referred in the text. You can see the head of the calf here. What is very interesting here in this case that I think that the calf is not a coincidence, because the calf in Hebrew refers, or clue is serves as a clue to the name of the king. The king was Eglon, and he holds a calf, which means Egel in Hebrew. So we have no inscription on this mosaic, but we have a clear visual clue on the name of this king. He holds the Egel, and the name of the figure is probably Eglon. Anyway, let's go to the next one once again. Thank you, Josh. So Ehud used the tribute, the calf, as the excuse to come to closest to the foreign king. And Nicanor and Yochanan ben Matityahu presents the same situation. First of all, I read, and Nicanor answered and said to Yochanan after he came and presented, introduced himself, and the foreign king, the foreign general, told him, "If you will do my desire, arise and take a swine and slaughter it up on the altar." So the persecution continues. He wants him to do the evil thing, or the prohibited tribute, which is this. But that was the reason that from the beginning why Yochanan came. He told all around that he is coming to kind of to do what the Nicanor want him to do. And then the Nicanor, the foreign general, says, "And you will be given, if you will do this prohibited tribute, you will be given royal dress, and you will ride on a king's horse, for you will be as one beloved of the king." So every one of you who knows Megillat Esther, I believe, resonates and echoes the verses from Esther. You can see it below to the right lower slide, that Haman, the Persian officer, told to Achashverosh, the Persian king, from Megillat Esther, "Let royal guard which the king has worn be brought, and a horse on which the king has ridden," etc., and so on. And then he did just this exact suggestion to Mordechai Yehudi. Anyway, we can see how the Megillat Antiochus author uses the biblical scenes and biblical verses in order to build his new narrative about Chanukah and Yochanan ben Matityahu. I continue with Megillat Antiochus, and then Yochanan answered, "My lord, I fear the children of Israel will find out that I'm doing this evil thing, this prohibited thing. Let therefore everyone go from before you, lest they inform them." So this is the excuse he uses to have the situation to stab the foreign general, which is just the same as the story of Ehud ben Gera did with Eglon Melech Moab. Let's go to the next. So another one, maybe. Thank you. Stop. No, before that, I have a few minutes more. We can see there are more other biblical references. I don't want to to get into every detail, but the one thing which is very important that you see that Yochanan on Migrat Antiochus is praying. He said, in Yochanan the son of Matityahu prayed, and he said a few things, included that he say, "My God has delivered him in my hands." At the moment, he stepped forward and plunged the sword into Nicanor's heart and cast his body into the hole of the sanctuary. And Ehud, it's just the same structure of the literary structure as Ehud's story. While Ehud approached the king and he said, "I have a message for you from God." That's the reason why the figure in white is pointing out to the sky, pointing up actually. And when he reaching, thank you, you can see the finger of the white figure. And let me read the end of this reference. Thank you. Reaching with his left hand, Ehud drew the dagger from his right side and drove it into Eglon's belly. And that's the reason why we cannot see the sword, because in the verse later also underlined that the sword get into the king's belly in its all. It wasn't seen outside the king's body. So I hope I try to convince you that Megillat Antiochus, which is a very late text relatively to the mosaic from Hanukkah, used several aspects from the biblical text while building or reconstructing the story of Hanukkah as his tradition of the traditions of the author told about Hanukkah and Yochanan ben Matityahu. So let's go to the next one. And Josh, last reference, which is very important. No, not yet. No, thank you. This one. I told you that the scholars call this mosaic the elephant's mosaic because elephants were very common since the days of Alexander the Great in usage by Hellenistic different in all the world Hellenistic dynasties. And Megillat Antiochus also knows the stories about the pilim, about the elephants. So later, after the stabbing, he mentions that Antiochus sent letter to his all provinces, etc., and so on, and he kind of commanded them to bring their elephant, and they brought the elephants garbed with shields and harness, which is exactly the visual elephants we can see in Hanukkah's mosaic. So if I want to conclude my presentation here, let's go ahead. This is another evidence. I won't get into it. Let's go to the next one. Another one. If I want to conclude what we see in the ancient mosaic at Hanukkah is not yet. Leave it this way. Is that the elephant mosaic, to my opinion, suggests an interpretation, very complicated interpretation. There are much more details to explain about it. A very complicated interpretation to the biblical stories and local traditions about the story of Ehud ben Gera, saving the people of Israel, serving as the savior, and bringing redemption to Israel out of the Moabite kingdom. On the other hand, we can see that other texts, such as Megillat Antiochus, which is a text dedicated to the Hanukkah story in a very late transmission and edited narratives more than thousands years later than the Maccabean revolt, also presents his version to Hanukkah using different biblical references, among them the very prominent aspects of Ehud ben Gera's story from Book of Judges. So I suggest that the elephants in the mosaic are not necessarily bringing the the voice of the Hellenistic period. It can serve in a later, as we see in a later period also, to depict a description of ancient powerful kingdom that the Savior, the Jewish Savior, brought a redemption from them, while of each Jewish culture, if of each of Jewish creators, be it the author of Megillat Antiochus or the visualizing Jewish community in Chukok or literary rabbinic in the Midrash, kind of interpret and reinterpret once and again the biblical story. But the common ground of all of them is the expectation to the Savior, expectation to redemption, which is the main core of Hanukkah story from that time to our time today. Thank you very much.
Avram, toda
Yes,
rabah. Thank you very much for that
you're welcome.
different look, that new look to the Hanukkah mosaic. And this brings us to our end. I want to wish everybody and their families and their loved ones and their communities Chag Orim Sameach, a wonderful Hanukkah that we start these next 8 days. I wish also to reiterate what Rabbi Berkowitz said, that our hearts are out to all of the communities, especially in Sydney, Australia, that were hit earlier today, our time, by a terrorist attack. I wish and I hope and I pray that we all stay safe for this Hanukkah and for the times going forth. I want to thank Rabbi Irena Gritsevskaya, Hadass Dayan Rosenberg, and Avram Yoskovich for their presentations. This is being recorded, and if anybody has any questions, we will be putting it up in a day or two. Thank you for your time. Very much appreciate it. From Schechter and all of us, Chag Sameach.